Today on Alabama Unfiltered, we talked to Stephanie Smith about the 2 gambling bills that were just introduced in the Senate, passed out of committee today. So even if you're pro-gambling, what do these bills have in it? And maybe there are some things that you should pay attention to as these bills make their way through the Senate and into the House. We hope you enjoy the show.
Welcome into Alabama Unfiltered, your favorite podcast here in the state of Alabama. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Beeson. Allison Sinclair is with me. Amy Beth Shaver is also here. Y'all are very familiar with the program. Thank you for giving us a thumbs up or a 5 stars every week. We appreciate you doing that. So let's just get started. One of the big issues here in the state of Alabama, especially in the Alabama legislature, surprise, surprise, is gambling is back, ladies. It's like an every year thing, but I think it gets worse.
It gets worse. And what's worse than worse is that we're in the middle of this 2-year global pandemic where states and schools and churches are shut down, and all we can pass and think about is gambling still.
And all we can bring in are bills that I printed that are so thick, I literally ran out of printer paper. And it's so filled with commissions and appointments. It will make your head spin. It's unbelievable that these are the people we sent to Montgomery, and this is what they're offering.
Now, let me get this straight. We're in Alabama.
Yes.
The reddest of the red state. Almost everyone who runs for office, even Democrats mostly in Alabama, claim to be very conservative, very family values, all these sorts of things. And we get what I consider corrupt. I'm not saying anything in this legislation is illegal, but when you start looking at it, it is clearly good old boy, you get an advantage, I get an advantage. Hey, we're going to make a lot of money. Everybody else is going to kind of get the short end of the stick. Would you agree that that is what has happened?
Yes. So
for years in Alabama, and that's one of the big questions is, how long have we been dealing with this? I first ran for the legislature in 94, I think it was. So you get Don Siegelman running for office in that time period. Mm-hmm. He's all for a lottery. It's going to be great. We're all going to go to school for free. Can we get it? And there ends up being corruption in that whole effort. Then you go to the bingo efforts where Milton McGregor and those people were honest. I used to call them the Cowboys because there's 2 different groups. And I know people are going to get upset. Fine. That's my spiritual gift, hacking people off, because you had the Cowboys and the Indians. So Mr. McGregor's passed away.
Right.
So now the Indians, who call themselves Indians, the Porch Creek Indians,
right?
They are kind of running the gambling effort here in the state of Alabama. So we have been dealing with this for years and years and years. And part of me wants to say we should have just done it years ago, because as we move forward, it gets worse. The old gambling legislation wasn't as big as it is now.
This is horrifying.
It seems to get worse. I said on my radio program, and then I want y'all's take on it, that if we're really going to say that we need to have gambling in the state, the problem is we have a constitutional amendment, a constitution that says we can't have games of chance. It would be 1 page that says, here's where it says we can't have it, strike it out. Period. That would be it. Literally a 1-page piece of legislation that says we don't have gambling today, but tomorrow anybody can do it if they want to. That would be simple, and that would be pure ideologically. But that's not what we're getting. We're getting page after page after page after page of who can, who can't. Mm-hmm. We've got to regulate it. We've got to oversee it. Well, why do you want to do that? Well, because we don't think it's good. Well, if it's not good, so you get where I'm going.
Absolutely.
So why can't we just do it the simple way? I still think it's a horrible decision for the state of Alabama. I think it's bad public policy. But wouldn't that make more sense? If we wanted to have the Alabama Unfiltered casino, we could.
Absolutely.
But under this, no, we can't.
No.
So I think I could give you my take on it.
Okay.
And I'm kind of new to the issue. But that's why we invited Stephanie Smith on, who has researched and knows everything there is to know. Stephanie, are you still with us?
Here I am.
Okay. Thank you for coming on. Really appreciate it. Can you give us a little bit of the history of gambling in Alabama? I know that Scott touched on, and it goes back on to Don Siegelman, and then of course his amendment got shot down. But what kind of back us up to the old days? What did those bills look like? And then what are we facing now? I know 2 just passed out of Tourism Committee in the Senate, actually on our way in today. So talk us through the history and a little bit of what we're looking at for 2022.
Okay, so Scott can probably speak to the history as well as anybody else in the state. But Don Siegelman ran for governor on a lottery platform, and then we voted that down in 1999. There were lots of forces at play that didn't want to accept that prohibition from the voters, and really just kind of the gambling. And I term them your cowboys and Indians. I call them the mafia, Scott. So we're in good company.
That's fair enough.
But the gambling bosses didn't really want to take no for an answer and decided to do their own thing and really wing it and see if anybody was willing to enforce the law. And some governors have, and some governors haven't. Governor Riley decided he wanted to enforce the law. Governor Bentley decided he didn't. Kay Ivey is not currently enforcing the law. And all along since, basically since 2000, every year there in the legislature, there's been another bill. They've skipped a few years, but not many. There's been another piece of legislation trying to legalize gambling in the state. As Scott said, it requires a constitutional amendment because all gambling is illegal in the state of Alabama, and it's written into our Constitution. The interesting thing about this set of bills, in the past, there's been what we term a straight paper lottery bill that has not been introduced this session. The 2 bills that we're dealing with, I've termed them the omnibus gambling bills because it's like the kitchen sink. It's every bit of gambling you could possibly think of. There are literally types of gambling in the bills that I don't even know what they are. I had to look them up. But it's basically all casino gambling, all table games, all slot machines, and sports betting on your smartphone statewide. So as Scott said, I mean, I wouldn't be for the one pager. I'm against gambling for moral reasons and fiscal reasons, but the one pager would be better than the 38 pager or the 77 pager that we're dealing with
Stephanie,
right now.
you're absolutely right. And what I try to do is point out to people that this is not about gambling. I always get people who are like, well, I have a right to do this. I have a right to do that. And my point is that these pieces of legislation are not giving you some right. You know what I'm saying? It's not allowing you to gamble. These things are designed to enrich certain people in certain places, and then everybody else just froze out. And so I'm trying to offer them, hey, look, if you really want freedom, if you really are, pure about these things, then we all should be able to do it. And I remember when I was heavily involved in some of these gambling activities, I asked this same question at what I would call a pretty high-level meeting, and I got looks of daggers and death, and you clearly don't understand how this is. If everybody could run a gambling establishment, we would have cannibalism. And I'm like, well, I'm not really hungry for, people flesh. But no one would be able to make a profit. Everyone would eat off each other.
That's called free market. That's called capitalism.
That's exactly right.
America.
Right. And one more thing on the history, which we never talk about. There is a reason the Alabama Constitution outlaws gambling.
Right.
And most states did that about the same time because America has gone through this 2 or 3 cycles. And they let something go and it all seems wonderful and it's great. Everybody wants it. And then society starts to kind of unravel a little bit. And then they come back and say, oh, we're not doing that anymore. So we don't learn from history, but people have just kind of forgotten that that's why we have it in our Constitution to start with.
Right.
That's right. Well, and I think it's interesting, Stephanie, that, and Scott, you just made this point about where we were basically putting these gambling establishments. I looked up the median income for the counties where they're placing gambling, because if this is for people to enrich themselves, it is only for the operator to enrich themselves. Because, for example, in Greene County. Do y'all know what the median income? Stephanie, you can't answer this because I know you'll know. Do you know what the income is in Greene County, Alabama?
I saw it on your paper and I'm floored. So I'm going to let
No,
you
I don't.
guess.
I don't know. I know it's not very high.
$16,949 according to the U.S. Census. So it's the first place they mentioned that they're going to put gambling. The second place that they mentioned was, let's see where else it was. DeKalb County was 21,000. Jackson County is another option, 24,000.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have Macon County, $17,500 is the income of those people. So we are to the point of Stephanie's article she wrote last week, which was amazing. We're making money off the back of the people who can least afford it. That's unacceptable.
But there's the argument, though, if I can play devil's advocate, that, I mean, if that's what they want to do, shouldn't they have the freedom to do it?
They should have the freedom to do it. But the problem is, if we say that we are for gambling, we have to understand also then that our taxes are going to go up because the money that they've received, let's assume this is below poverty level, then they are, for example, going to be on Medicaid. And taxes that way will go up because they will have used that money for gambling. And then, oh goodness, they need more money. Where are they going to get that money from? So in order to provide more services, then, we got to raise taxes so that we can provide more services. And so it's one of those circular problems that we have that we never quite get off the hamster wheel when it comes to gambling.
It's kind of a depressing thing when you tell someone who's financially challenged, and everybody has had times when like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do or whatever. When you tell them, hey, come to my gambling establishment, you probably are going to win, which is just an out and out lie.
Right.
So they take people who can't afford it to start with and promise them some sort of winnings. And that's just unfair. I remember another situation. It was actually in that same meeting I was talking about earlier, where I said, well, aren't you preying on the poor? No. These are mostly middle-class folks using their discretionary money. They've decided not to go to the movies or go out. They're going to go to the casino. And I was like, well, that's great because I've got this other idea. Let's, if someone is on government subsidies and they win, you got to do all your tax stuff. If you won like $10,000, you can pay back the government welfare that you're gambling maybe for the past year or something like that. And it will kind of disincentivize these folks and kind of pay back the public coffers. That'll be wonderful. Right. That was a worse question than the one that ended up with the answer of cannibalism.
You look like an alien, I'm sure.
Yes. What are you
Stephanie,
talking about?
Who do you think is pushing this? Because I have to think that it's Governor Ivey, and I don't know if that's a fair assumption, but I just don't think the people of Alabama are pushing this issue. What are you thinking?
If I'm being honest, it's the gambling operators. Now, she's been supported by some of them. I don't know that she's said anything this year specifically about these bills. That doesn't mean she's not working behind the scenes. She put together a study commission that was basically a dog and pony show to create something that said that we ought to pass gambling. She was for the bill last year. And, even brought some legislators into her office and was discussing the bill with them, trying to get it passed. The bill this year is pretty similar to what we've dealt with in the last several years. It's slightly worse. They've done a good job of making it slightly worse, in my opinion. But there are things in the bill that are really interesting to me. That even if you're not concerned about gambling, or if you're more of a libertarian kind of viewpoint on gambling, there are still plenty of things in this bill that should make you be against it. The huge bureaucracy that it's going to create. The commission will be unelected. The commission will also have police powers, subpoena powers, and have the ability to arrest anyone on their property. And their police powers will actually override the police powers of any local authorities. So you literally have a situation to where you have an unelected commission being paid an undetermined amount of money from the winnings. And that commission will have an enforcement division that will be able to override any sheriff or any local law enforcement for any crime. It doesn't have to be specifically gambling related, but for any crime, they will have the ability to arrest people and have police powers.
Hey,
That's
Stephanie,
a big deal.
let me ask you about this police power, because I'm sure there's legislators there who haven't read the bill, and in their mind, they're thinking, okay, we're going to have this commission. They're going to have some police powers because they're going to make sure that the gambling interests are doing what they're supposed to do. My first thought is the police powers will be to make sure that there's no competition. That Joe Blow's not running the poker game in so and so county that's taking $200 from the casino. It does. Is that not what it can do?
All that they can go into the ones that are already established, correct? That are operating illegally with zero being done at this point.
Right.
So there's just such an opportunity for abuse of power in that setup, and even down, like Stephanie, talk about the commission. I think in both bills, they're appointed each by like the governor. Is this correct? The governor gets one appointment?
3.
Oh.
The governor gets 3, the lieutenant governor, the pro tem, the minority leader, the majority leader. It kind of goes down the legislative line. There are 9.
We're down to giving minority leaders and majority leaders appointments now?
The attorney general gets an appointment.
There are 9 unelected members of the commission. And keep in mind, there are some parameters. They're like, at least one should be a lawyer, at least one should be an accountant, whatever. But they would be handling literally hundreds of millions of dollars of money on an annual basis, and would wield a lot of power. It also says that they can only have to meet quarterly, but they will be paid the exact same amount as legislators, which right now is about $52,000 plus expenses.
So for 4 meetings a year.
It won't be a shabby job.
And so those appointments, you can kid yourself and say they're really going to choose the best people out there. But think about the corruption that could come in just buying off those appointments to the commission. It just is gross.
That commission has incredible power about where expansion can be done. Does it decide who can get an expansion, or is it? There are so many questions, and Amy Beth, can you show us again how big this legislation is? I know for a fact that a lot of legislators wouldn't read anything over about 5 pages. So how long is that one?
Okay, so this one is, let me show you. I think it's 77 pages. Mm-hmm. This is from Albritton. In tourism, and then I guess this is the shorter abridged version, which is only 38 pages, but they all are doing what we've said is creating a massive bureaucracy. It's unaccountable. They answer only to their friends, and I found the language used in the bills ironic because they kept talking about high character people, but high character people I thought that was ironic that they had to be of good character to be able to handle these hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet they're unelected, they're unaccountable. Mm-hmm. They meet 4 times a year for I don't know how much money that's actually going to end up being. Mm-hmm. So the question is, at the end of the year, would you all allow us, please, to see the new bank accounts that you open that might be offshore, or the lock boxes that are in your office at the bottom of your desk on that left side? Like, could you let us see that part too? Right. Because I just kept underlining the must be of good character. But what does that mean? Who decides
what's good character?
What's good character? That's exactly right.
Elected officials?
That's my question, is what is good character? Because is it good character then to go in, and yes, we live in a free society. We are free to do what we want to do, but to knowingly place these casinos and these Greyhound tracks and whatever they have, some of them are just going to be really live and living color now, to place them in places where people are struggling. And you're saying, but we're going to give them hope, because it's fun.
So let me ask that. We have multiple counties in the state who have had gambling in some form or fashion for a number of years, some of them for decades. And they promised, let's just look at track record. They promised that these were going to be economic development engines for these counties.
Right.
Has that been successful?
No.
The answer is absolutely not. You're
No.
right. So they can't even continue to make this promise. But I think the challenge for those of us who think this is a bad idea is, number one, the legislature is rolling on this one. Gambling interests have given them a tremendous amount of campaign money. It's a campaign year. And we're kind of stuck between this rock and the hard place because there are people who are allowed to do some semblance of it now. And then other people are asking, well, if they can do it, why can't we do it?
Right.
Which leads me back to the idea of what I said. Well, if we can do it, then why can't everybody do it? At least if everybody does it,
Right.
and it spirals out of control, you can get rid of it. And that's what other states have done. I think it was South Carolina that had one of these electronic kind of bingo things, and it blew up. And then people started saying, this is not good. We don't like it. We don't know what's happening. And they were able to vote it down. But if you just let me do it,
Right.
and I'm making hundreds and hundreds of $1 million a year, instead of 1 million people making hundreds, I'm making hundreds of millions. I'm going to buy the legislature in some form or fashion. They can say that's not what happens, but I'll just manage to be able to, y'all can never get rid of me.
Right.
I mean, once you let that monster out, it's almost impossible for the people to put it back in. And that's what I'm trying to warn people about. But it's difficult because people buy into the, well, I give me my freedom, give me my freedom.
Right.
Well,
Which
here's
is
the deal.
about
This
so much
is
more.
so much like the medical marijuana bill that passed last session, where, even if you're for medical marijuana, there's a good way to do it, there's a safe way to do it, and there's a bad way to do it. What I'm trying to get across to people, because even people in my own conservative circles are for the lottery, maybe even casino gambling, or maybe they haven't thought about it. But even if you are pro gambling, pro lottery, there's still such thing as a bad way to do it. And this is a bad way to do it. I mean, there are 5 places that these casinos could go into. They're already chosen. Green Track, what's the other one? Victoryland, like those names will be in our Constitution because they are the only ones that will be allowed to have these casinos. Right. And then they would build, that we would go into a compact with the Porch Creek Indians to take, I think it's 20% of their earnings. And then in this bill, each 5 can have a satellite location.
See, that's an expansion from the way it was in the old days. For the ones where they were, it was alleged they were trying to buy people off. I think it only had 5 locations, so now we're up to 10.
Yeah,
right.
we're up to 10.
Now we're up to 10. And it's just, it's already decided. It's already decided where they're going. There's no free market. So if y'all remember in 2021, when this was coming up, Don Jr. put out a tweet and basically was like, Trump couldn't come in and do a casino in Alabama. And I think it really, like, however you feel about Trump doesn't really matter. But I think that resonated with some people that finally caught on, if they follow, like, oh, wait, this isn't free market.
Right.
This is Montgomery getting their hands all
This is
up
good
in
old
the
boy
people's
network.
business.
It
That's
is.
exactly what it is.
That's right.
Absolutely good old boy.
Well, I think the problem is in all of it, because you're right, there's a right way and a wrong way, and I obviously am not for it at all. Now let me say this. When we go into Georgia, are we going to get a scratch off? Yes, we always get a scratch off because it's fun, because we give ourselves $5. That's it.
I
done.
just started setting money on fire. And
I mean, because that's essentially what you're doing with it. So I'm not talking about that. I am talking about the people, and I'll find the study and I will send it so that we have it in the show notes. Right. But I believe it was a study done by the University of Pittsburgh and or Toronto. But I've got it right here. I just, of course, left the piece of paper that tells me where these people are from. But the burden of gambling in these communities found that in poverty-stricken communities, it's like 100% of disadvantaged people struggle with gambling. And so that's my problem, is we say we are for freedom, but where are you putting these gambling establishments in places where people are least likely to be able to afford it? So, let's set this up. Then we, the government, can come in and help you some more. So you're hooked. You're hooked. You're not only hooked on gambling,
except the
but
owner
you're also
of the
hooked
the owner of
on
the
the
casino
government
is sucking off
subsidy
money
that I'm going to
as
give
the
you.
taxpayers keep trying to fix. We got to fix this problem. Mom's addicted. We got to fix more problems. She's not buying shoes or toothbrushes. We need some more money
That's
in
right.
there. And then this just keeps sucking money out. as we keep trying to fix the
and
problems.
we only offer 0.5% of the gambling proceeds for people who have problems with gambling and addiction.
But that should tell you everything. The fact that that's even in the bill, that 0.5% to help with gambling addiction, they know this is an issue.
That's exactly right.
They
That
know
is
this
exactly
is bad.
So let me ask this question: like today, if I said, okay, all your friends who are for it and want to be able to go do it, and I said, all right, come over to my house, we'll play cards all night. I'll jerry rig the, I don't know if you can even say that word anymore, but I'll rig up the old Atari. Boy, I'm old. And we'll have slot machines, and I'll pay out. There's nothing that keeps y'all from coming to my house and playing cards, is there? There's nothing that keeps us from playing.
Right.
But what all the prohibitions are against is a business that says, I only make money if I take your money. You don't build casinos off winners, right?
Right.
So the whole thing's designed.
Obviously.
No one is being kept today from, hey, I'll bet you $5 North Carolina wins tonight or tomorrow night whenever they play. I'll bet you $10 Alabama wins in the SEC basketball tournament. There's nothing that keeps me and you from doing that together, but there's a law that keeps entities from running businesses that the whole goal is to profit. And this legislation is purely to make sure that only certain people profit. To me, that drives me crazy.
We just went to Las Vegas. I can't even remember when we were out there.
It wasn't long ago.
It wasn't long ago. And we stayed at the Venetian and didn't touch. I mean, we didn't gamble once. I'm not a gambler. I'm actually opposed to it. But all you have to do is walk around the Bellagio or any of those places and know the house does always win. I mean, so what are we doing? Why? And people will say, well, people are doing it anyway. Well, you know what? There's human trafficking. There's drug sales. What? People are doing it anyway. Should we just make it legal? No. And so I think it does, because I try and approach it separating the morality issue from it and just, this is a bad bill. And then you have the whole, as Christians, as believers, as you know, if that is your moral compass, there is that issue. And I look, I mean, to be honest, we've had people in our family that have been affected deeply by addiction. Mm-hmm. And I look at kids. My son is a freshman at Auburn. And I look at so many of his friends that even in high school, as sophomores, juniors, seniors, had sports gambling addictions. And we're just going to like put it on a silver platter and make it really accessible. And it's not going to lead anywhere good. I just don't think the human tendency is to kind of dive into addictive behaviors and bad habits.
If you do a cost benefit analysis for society in general, and you put, okay, these are the positives, this is what we're going to get, this is the negatives. It's an easy argument. The negatives far outweigh the positives. So we're not thinking rationally about it as a society. Somebody has, and I think it's a good marketing campaign, has convinced us that it's being kept from us.
Right. Someone's
keeping me from being able to do it.
Right.
And then you usually get that person who says, and that person who's for it says, well, you know, we only go like once a year. Okay, great. So you're not addicted to it, but you can't miss that once a year. I mean, I'm not saying you are addicted. I'm just saying, yeah, you're not who they're building the casino for.
That's right.
If you only go one time a year, I have a hard time understanding that mindset of, no, we just need to have it because somebody says I can't.
Right. Well, I think it's that whole idea and identity that is floating around our culture that we're victims.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're playing off of the very worst of us. They're ignoring people who are victims, who will be trafficked, the unintended consequences of the gambling addiction, the unintended consequences of, running out of your money. And what are you going to do then? Mm-hmm. Desperate people do desperate things. Who knows? But there are several unintended consequences. There's mothers who will gamble away their WIC money so that they can go try again and hope that they get something this time. But you're right. I did gambling work for API 15 years ago when we moved back to Birmingham. And that is a very real unintended consequence. And so this idea, though, that we say it's being kept from us, you have to look around, like you said, and say, what? Right. Please show me. We mentioned this a couple of shows ago. I need you to show me how this is being kept from me.
Right.
Mm-hmm. When I have the freedom to do whatever I want, whenever I want, how is this being kept from you?
Mm-hmm.
and then to play off the very worst of people, which is greed and gluttony. And we all, as human beings, the Bible says that the human heart is deceptively wicked above all else. Who can know it? Is that we are deceiving ourselves. And not only that, we're writing a constitutional amendment that is banking on people living in deception, and we're making money off of that.
No, I agree completely. And then people want to say that, well, this one drives me crazy. It's those church people keeping me from it.
Yeah.
It's the Christians are keeping me from getting gambling. I want to gamble. I'm like, number one, I don't really understand why you live here.
Right.
Move somewhere where they have gambling. And this is a free country still, for the most part. And they could move to where gambling is easily accessible. And then they do this one, which will be, well, you bought a scratch off. I don't want to hear from her. I don't want to hear about morality from her. But here's the thing. Me saying, okay, I'll bet you a coat that, I can hit this golf ball further than you can or whatever, that's not inherently a sin. Mm-mm. But one thing that is usury, which I think is excessive interest. And all these liberal groups are always against check cashing companies and this kind of person. Oh, you're charging them too much interest. How much interest does gambling charge? I mean, literally, I'm seriously.
Yeah.
Oh, come you're basically, I'm putting my money in and you take it. I put my money in, you take it. That's unbelievable amounts of interest, is it not?
Yes, it is.
They're going to take it all if I stand there the whole time. That seems to me like super usury, but it's not. You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It's everything in moderation, the whole 9 yards, and we will be condoning it. We're basically going to say, this is all right. This is what we want for the state.
One of the things I would say is that a lot of people say that they're for a lottery, but not for casinos. And one of the reasons is because they want to fund state education. Couple of things there. One is that they're working on the largest budget for the state education budget ever, which only trumps last year and last year and last year. We're on the 5th year of the largest budget ever on the education side. And the other thing is that in the bill, if you read it, and other states have done scholarship kind of programming, like the Hope Scholarship in Georgia or some other places. That is not what this bill says. This bill basically says it could be used for any workforce development function, any sort of educational function, and college scholarships. And that's very vague and undefined. So basically it's a bit of a slush fund. It's not one of those, oh, hey, if I could get a college scholarship for my kids, I would vote for this. That is not what this is. It's not an education lottery. That's
Stephanie, what are they claiming this will raise? I remember when the lottery came out years and years and years ago, when the numbers were finally run in a state that's as small as ours. It really was, I wouldn't say it wasn't a drop in the bucket, but it was going to raise less money than the budget was going up every year naturally. So it wasn't going to do all the things they said it was going to do. How much money is this supposed to raise?
I think they're making a comparison to Tennessee, which is about $300 million a year. Sports betting, they're saying, might add about $80 million a year. I don't think they really know. Here's the other wrinkle: is that we're last. And this time it's good. It's good that we're last. But as far as raising money, it won't raise the kind of money that the other states have raised because there are alternatives. So it's a situation to where we're last in line. So we'll raise the least amount of money. Casino gambling is not particularly popular. What they'll probably make the most money off of is the sports gambling and the digital gambling, which is another thing I wanted to bring up, because they're saying it's only 5 locations. That's untrue. That what they mean is there are 4 current locations that are operating illegally. They're going to add 2 satellite locations and then an additional PCI. So that's 4 plus 4 plus 2, which is 10. So they're touting that this is a tightening of the belt, and it is not. It's a huge expansion, and that doesn't even count the sports betting. Because the sports betting will then be legal and literally in everyone's living room. It's on smartphones. Right. So, I mean, you can talk about different locations all you want. I've got 5 boys.
How do they claim that we're going to get any revenue from sports betting if the sports betting server is located in Puerto Rico or where? How are we supposed to get that money?
This bill, Scott, actually makes it funneled all through the current or the operators that they're allowing. Meaning,
okay. So
everything has to
it
be
will be
funneled
illegal
through
to
their
try to go
server,
around.
so they'll
You'll
catch
have
the
to.
money,
Oh my
but it'll be in your living room.
Wow. Well,
And the whole part about, I mean, this is a whole other podcast where we could talk about our education system. I mean, like Stephanie said, even without a lottery or gambling, they're throwing so much money at the Alabama education system, and we are dead last in math, even with all this money. And we are 47th in English. I mean, it is ridiculous that we don't need more money in education.
No.
We need a total revamping of the system. And I don't know, Montgomery is just, God, the more I pay attention, it's just so disappointing. I don't know.
It
who's
is
running
like
that
our
place.
leaders are incapable of fixing a problem.
They just
Because
seem to
they don't
create
want to.
more.
Well, the more problems you have, the more times you can have people come in and say, "Hey, do our plan and we'll fix it."
That's
Do this
exactly
plan
what
and we'll
this
fix it."
reminds me of, like this whole masking, pandemic, where we're going to mask your children and we're going to take them online and we're going to create this problem. Oh, and then we're going to come in and solve it. That's exactly what they're about to do with gambling. And it's disheartening. Stephanie, what do we do to stop this? I mean, it seems so insurmountable. And I know you talk about a lot how can the grassroots organizations or the Allison Sinclair, Scott Beeson, Amy Beth Shavers ever have our voices heard when the gambling mafia, cowboys or Indians, whatever they are, really get in, and we can't compete with that money. So where does this leave us, the people, and how do we stop this?
I think our best chance to stop it is how we've been stopping it, which is legislatively. If it gets through the process, we defeated it in 1999, but that was an uphill battle. It would be even more so now because of the amount of money that we're talking about for the operators. In different states where they've done a referendum, the gambling operators have spent about 1,000 to 1 on
goodness.
advertising and different things.
1,000 to 1.
It was over 2,000 to 1
Oh
in a couple of different places.
So it will be ad after ad of how if we just had this,
Right.
no child would be poor.
Gambling
no
is
child would have
great.
any. Everything would be. Oh, it would be wonderful.
And the
It'd be
naming of
utopia.
things, you know how state government and federal government name something. It's called the Alabama Education Lottery, even though it's not particularly for the Alabama education system. So
that's amazing.
yeah, I mean, I think our best weapon is speaking truth in the legislature, and honestly, I mean, being completely honest, it has been stopped by what some term as greedlock before, which means the current gambling operators that were chosen as a loser instead of chosen as a winner in this set of bills don't want it to pass because they want to continue to operate illegally.
Right.
And so if you watched the committee hearing, even this morning, you saw about almost half of the people who stood up and talked against the bill were actually current operators in other locations that had been chosen as a loser.
Right.
I found myself
former Governor
agreeing.
Jim Folsom stood up and said that the only decent thing to do was to let the gambling operations that are illegally going in Greene County continue to operate illegally.
Well, here's the thing.
What do you say to that?
We've got two sides to. I mean, so if you're against it, you're for the illegal. It's a great plan on their side. If you're against it, you're for illegal gambling. But if you're for it, then you're for taking illegal gambling and announcing that it's legal.
You really can't win.
Right.
So what happens now? The two bills passed out of the tourism committee, and we have about 4 weeks left, I'm guessing, in this session. So what happens to the bill now? And how do we advocate for amendments, stoppage? I mean, I wouldn't even, this is just so bad. I don't even know how you work it.
It would be best if it just didn't get on the calendar.
Right.
But I have a feeling it's probably going to make it on at least the Senate calendar. Wouldn't y'all agree? I mean, are
Stephanie?
they've had it up for votes in the Senate before, have they not? Or similar pieces of legislation?
It passed
Stephanie?
last year. This very similar bill passed last year in the Senate.
Okay.
I believe it's
so my guess is
23-9.
they'll put it
I
on the
have to look it
calendar
up.
again and vote it out of the Senate, and then the best chance to be in the House. I would hope that the Senate would decide not to do this, but
So we need to contact
I would
Jabba
hope
Wagner.
that the Senate would decide that there are other priorities for the next 10 days. That would be my
Amen.
that would be
hope.
great.
Amen. I mean, can we yeah, sorry.
So,
was
I mean,
about to
as
get
far as
going.
who you contact the rules chair, Jabba Wagner, you contact Clay Schofield, you contact Del Marsh, you contact Will Ainsworth, contact the entire leadership of the Senate and say, hey, y'all have better things to do. Do something else.
Yeah.
This
Right.
is not the year for this. This bill is worse than it ever has been. It's an election year. You don't have a governor that's pushing it as much as she has in years past, at least not
Right.
publicly. And so my message to them would be these are two bad bills if you're against gambling, and these are two bad bills if you're for gambling. So let's just all agree to kick this can down the road once again and see if we can come up with something better or something, or maybe at some point we just say, hey, we're not going to be a gambling state, and that's okay. We're good with it.
It
Right.
just feels
what I
like
say.
such a slap in the face. Like I think of so many families that lost loved ones, family members, friends this year, and we've all dealt with some really heavy things, and they're passing alcohol that you can buy alcohol at food trucks and gambling. Like it's just so disheartening and seems so out of touch.
Those are the things they're passionate about.
Yeah, it's
Those
bizarre.
are like their flag, their
Yeah.
banners,
Yeah.
and you're like, really?
Like where
We can't
It's-
get behind the Second Amendment. We can't put restrictions on the next time we have an emergency situation in
Right.
the state. We can't
Right.
we can't fix education at all.
yeah,
We just
just seems very ivory tower.
it really is.
It does seem very ivory tower. So, Stephanie, you brought up something really important, and there are listeners that are just now becoming politically involved.
Mhm.
And the idea that they're going to call their senator or they're going to call just Montgomery in general is terrifying. Could you walk somebody through the very first email or phone call that they make, or possibly their first interaction, because they're going to go walk the halls and just meet their representative and see what's going on? You are an expert. Could you take us through what that looks like for people who say, you know what, this is it. Like, this is my thing, and I want to make a difference.
Good question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that people would probably be pleasantly surprised at the reception that they would get, especially from their actual representatives. A lot of times people don't want to, the elected officials don't want to hear from people who are not their constituents. And that makes sense, except there are certain leadership positions, such as lieutenant governor, such as a pro tem, such as majority and minority leaders, rules chair, that the decisions that they're making are really on behalf of the entire state. And
Correct.
so those folks need to hear from people who are not their constituents, as well as people who are their constituents. But as far as people reaching out, make it personal. You know what Allison just said about a family situation that they've dealt with addiction, and make it personal. Make it your own words. Make it your own thoughts and your own feelings about it. I mean, heck, if you're for gambling but you're against these bills, be like, I don't care if you're for gambling. I'm against this bill because I am not for bigger bureaucracy. I'm against this bill because it picks winners and losers, and that's not the government's job.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Now, there are tons of reasons that people would, individually be against something like this. But to me, the biggest step is just do it. It's not that hard. They're not going to be rude. They're not going to hang up on you. The phone numbers that are listed online are office numbers. You're probably going to get a secretary who's going to be like, okay, hey, which bill are you talking about? You need the bill number, or you can just say the gambling bills. If you don't know the bill number, say, hey, this is Stephanie Smith, and I'm calling to talk to my senator. I'm against the gambling bills. And they'll write it down. And then at the end of the day,
and he'll get the report.
they'll
It'll
ask for
say
tally mark.
55 people called against it, and 3 people call for it. That kind of thing. It definitely happens.
The bills are Senate Bill 293 and Senate Bill 294, if you would like to reference those numbers.
And there are not companion bills in the House. That's significant. There usually are.
Right.
There are no House bills this year, which some people have brought up why they're not originating in the House since they're generating income. But that's probably a different question for a different day. But as far as people contacting their legislator, I think that emails work, but phone calls are better.
Okay.
I agree.
Would you? Yeah.
You agree, Scott?
No, I agree. Absolutely, I agree. And try to be nice, because if you get one that just says you're an idiot and I hate you and you're awful, that one just goes in the trash. So, but Stephanie, I want to thank you for all that you do, not just on this issue. And I think that all of y'all should get a thanks for one of our challenges is people think, oh, well, this is just a gambling bill. I'm for gambling. Or they think this is the medical marijuana bill. And there's so much more in there. I used to say, oh, this is a birthday cake for everybody's mom's bill. Well, who's opposed to that? Well, I might have a couple other things in there, that kind of stuff. So people just aren't informed. They don't know the details. And Stephanie's doing a great job letting them know. We're doing a great job letting them know. So I appreciate what y'all do.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie.
It.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Any last words?
You know what? This is heavy. I think you just said something really important, as if everything we haven't talked about today isn't heavy and important, but it is to go beyond what somebody tells you. Go beyond the bill. Oh, that sounds good. Mm-hmm. The Word of God is useful for many things, and one of it is it tells us to come and let us reason together. It tells you to take every thought captive. It is a thinking. It's a call to think constantly. And so my word of caution this week is, as you look at these bills, whether you're for or against, take the time to look beyond the obfuscation and the walls and it's really simple. You're either for this or against. No. Right. Read it. Find out what it's going to do. Find out the unintended consequences. And if those are things you can live with, then fine. You can live with them. And if they're not, you can't, but let your voice be heard. But first take that step of figuring out what's beyond all the smoke that they're blowing.
Yeah, I think
and figure out what it's going to do to the citizens, to our friends, to our family, to people who struggle. What is it going to do? And then that's how you can make your decision. Yeah,
I think most Alabamians, if they actually went through the pages, the multiple pages, would be like, That's not what I'm for. That's not what is this? This is not what I thought it was. I think they would be shocked.
Yeah.
I think the days of being lazy voters or citizens are over. And we took for granted for too long that I'm sure you were taking the best interest of your constituents into consideration.
Thank you.
But they're really not. And they get to Montgomery and they get in this little bubble and they almost can't help it. But that's where we come in, where we have to remind them, hey, we're here and you are there on our behalves. So hear what I'm saying. And we've got to get involved and read past what you're saying, the obvious, the short little headline. So
I agree. Good. Hey, thank y'all for being with us. This has been Alabama Unfiltered. Please give us a thumbs up, 5 stars, all the things. You can find us at all the usual places. And we'll visit with you again next week.